Hello everyone, and in this video, I'm going to be walking through my journey as a first-time homebuyer. And it's been, at a high level, the biggest emotional roller coaster I've ever gone on. And it's insane how high the highs are and how low the lows can be. But, as of today, my offer for this home was accepted after several months of searching. And I'm it's hard for me to put into words how happy I am and how excited I am to even think that I have the possibility of someday owning my home. It's very, very special. It's a very exciting moment. And I feel very lucky and grateful for all the opportunities and privileges that I have. And I just wanted to make this video to reflect on this process and to share what I've learned with other people. If this is something that, you want to get into, it's going to be an insane amount of work. You're going to be calling tons of people and driving all over the place and touring tons of houses, and it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of money. It is the biggest financial purchase any of us make our entire lives. And so making sure that you fully understand what you're buying, the risks associated with what you're buying, and the market conditions is all things that, it's not something that you just do overnight. And I will say, like, when I first thought of trying to buy a house, I underestimated how hard it would be a lot. I made mistakes, and I'd say probably the biggest lesson that I learned out of all of it at a high level is that your choice of your buying agent, the realtor who represents you in the negotiations for a house that you want, is probably one of the most important decisions that you make as a first-time home buyer. And what I mean by that is you need to make sure that you genuinely feel like this is a person who is acting in your best interests, and they're not just there to close that deal to get their commission. And I will say that, as a first-time home buyer, the first realtor that I went with did not have those things, and I didn't know, at least what good meant and what my expectations should be, and what the market conditions had been like. Because leading up to when I first started searching for a house, the market was a seller's market, which means that homes were being listed for like $1 million, and before they even had one open house showing, they had a preemptive offer for like 1.5 million. And so, in those types of markets, buying a house is insanely hard. And just because the asking price might be low or might be something you think you can afford, it's often not. It's going to go for well over that. And interest rates play an enormous role in this too, because when interest rates are low, people who want to buy are able to get much bigger mortgages because of their debt to income ratios being changed. And so, if the federal government halves the interest rate that they have, so right now it's like 5%, but if they halved it to 2.5%, it doubles the mortgage that you can get with your debt to income ratio. So instead of offering $1 million on a house, you can now be offering $2 million on that same house. And that's the reason why you get in those sellers markets these situations that are just really weird, where these things just fly off the market. You don't even get a chance to see the house and people are already like buying it. And that's not the type of market that I'm in right now. But the types of realtors who start entering that market kind of get used to that thing, and the sellers also get used to this thing where like they're expecting numbers way over their asking prices. And as the market changes, like in our case, as interest rates rose, it begins to slow the market down. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a buyer's market, though. It just means that the market's slowing down. And so, there's just all these market forces at play here that are completely beyond your control as a prospective home buyer. And, part of the reason I even talk about this is because the most important decision you make is finding a realtor, a buying agent that you trust. And in my case, I got really lucky to have a family friend who was representing me as my buying agent in these matters. And the reason why it's so important to have a good buying agent is because the buying agent is supposed to make sure that and they will also review the disclosures on these houses. Because when you walk into these open houses, they do a lot of fairy dusting. So they put in brand new IKEA furniture and all types of drawers and it's really shiny, little countertops and things to just make it look, like you can just move right in and it'll be so easy. But underneath the surface of the house, you can have foundation issues, you can have water leaks, you can have outdated windows, you can have roofs that need to be replaced soon, you can have gas shutoff valves that aren't compliant because they don't have seismic shutoff. There's all these things that you have to know and that are also specific to areas like outside of California where earthquakes aren't much of a problem. Maybe people don't even care about the automatic shutoff seismic gas valves. So, it's very specific to that market. And these are all things that a good buying agent will know already. And, when they're reading these disclosures, they'll be pointing things out to you like, you might need to upgrade the electrical system in this house if it's not already 125 amps. You might need to, install a new water heater. You might need to install a new roof. So, it's just like knowing these things and then also having a good idea of how much it's going to cost is incredibly important. And these are risks that you take on when you get into these houses. And just because a house might look like an attractive offer, foundation issues are probably one of the most expensive issues you can have on a home because you need to re-level the house. Releveling the house can end up breaking windows and breaking walls and requiring a bunch of repair work to the interior that isn't even part of the cost of rebasing that house. And then once it's rebased and it's jacked up, you got to have, a bunch of earth movers come in and pull, the bad stuff out. You got to re-drill down to bedrock. You got to make sure that, you're actually in good soil and that you've got proper drainage, because even if you've got solid foundations, if you don't have good drainage, the water during the rainy years will begin to accumulate around that foundation and it'll ruin that house. Like there's just an insane number of considerations to make before you pull that trigger and make an offer on a house. And when you make an offer on a house, you need to know that basically as soon as you make that offer, if it's accepted, it's a pretty legally binding thing. And there is a little buyer's remorse thing, but you are giving up at least 3% of that asking price when you back out of those things if you put down an offer. So, 3% might seem, oh, it's not that much, but if it's $1 million house, that's $30,000. So, really, really important to do your homework, to know exactly what you're getting into, to make sure that you're well represented. Because the other thing that these realtors will be doing for you, in addition to reviewing the disclosures, is they'll be reviewing the comps or comparables. And so basically, this is a huge part of figuring out, what is a fair offer to make on a house, and the way they do that is by basically looking at the price history of similar homes in that area that have sold within the last, year or so. And you can see the trends change over time because the exact same house will change in value depending on the number of buyers and sellers and, the specific, disclosure for that given home. And big iBuying companies like Zillow look at this and they think that they can predict these things with machine learning algorithms, but they are not taking into account the confounding variables of the federal government changing interest rates, turning it into like a buyer's market or a seller's market. They also don't take into account things like the, foundation issues that are in those disclosures. So it's not something you can just look at a trend line and say, oh, it's clearly just going to keep appreciating in value. There's a ton of other stuff to that picture that you really have to understand very well before you even think about making an offer. And it just takes a ton of time. And these disclosure agreements can be hundreds of pages long. And it is your responsibility as a buyer to know what you're getting into. And a good buying agent will be helping you understand, what are the big things here? Because you'll have a laundry list of issues. And, hopefully they're all tiny little things. But if some of them are for whatever reason, setting off an alarm flag of that's going to be $100,000 or that's going to be $200,000, you really want someone there with you who understands that to make sure that you're paying attention to the right things. And, that's what you get with a good buying agent. The other thing you get with a good buying agent is someone who's able to know how to negotiate with the selling agent, the person who's representing the home seller. And, once you have, in my case, I'm very lucky that my friend has been in the industry for a long time. The other types of sellers or selling agents in that market and how they negotiate. Because if you have an inexperienced buying agent, like someone who just got their realtor's license, who's trying to negotiate for you and they don't understand the market and they don't understand, the types of selling agents out there and their tactics, you'll end up paying way more than you need to on a house. And, the buying agent, they're honestly kind of incentivized to have your house sale price be as high as it can because they're commissioned on the sale price. If they were able to get you the house for 900,000, but instead you put in that $1 million offer, then they just made 2.5% off that extra 100,000, which is going to be $2,500 for them, in addition to, their other remaining part. So it's like they're going to get 25 grand instead of 2250, and it's very kind of like, that's the reason why that buying agent is so important, is that like you want someone who will get you in at a fair market price for this house. And as the buyer, it is your call at the end of the day for what number you put down on your offer letter and what contingencies you put down on that offer letter. And in your offer, these contingencies can be anything you want. It's your choice as to what your offer is as the buyer. And so again, you're going to want to have a good buying agent representing you on these things so that you'll know exactly like what type of contingency would you want to have here. Like, if the house had some foundation cracks and you're looking at it and you're like, I like this house a lot, but I'm just so concerned that this foundation is going to need 200 grand in work or whatever, then you can put that into a contingency if you still want to make an offer and just say like, you'll have a geotech engineer come out and do soil samples and, give you a quote for how much this is going to cost. And if it's going to cost more than 200 grand, then you're going to back out of that deal. So it's like you can attach strings onto your offer that, you just need to know, and you need to have a good buying agent there to know like what types of strings should you put on if you're in that type of situation. So really, really important stuff to just, so much of it revolves around having a good buying agent, and it's not this simple thing. And it's not stuff you can just Google either. It comes from the years of experience of working in that particular market or that particular area, knowing all the legal codes for housing, knowing those disclosures, and it's a lot more than just a little math model. So that's point number one for me in terms of like what I just wish I learned sooner, and really what's a big outcome for me is just like make sure you trust your buying agent with your life, basically, because they have enormous potential to really help you out or to really hurt you. So it's like you need to really trust this person and know that they're going to be acting in your best interests. And in my case, like I ended up disengaging with the first buying agent that I had because he wasn't letting me pick my terms. Like he was insisting that my offer look a certain way, and I wanted to choose a different price. I wanted to offer a little bit less, and there were other things, but just it was not a good fit for me. I didn't like the pressure that I was receiving on that, and so I just said, we're going to have to disengage here, and I will let you know if I want to re-engage with you specifically. And so like that was a huge thing. It just took me a good couple months, but just like getting to that point where what your expectations are for a buying agent that you will trust as a home buyer, because it's an enormously huge decision. And that's point one. Point two is financing is going to be huge, because very unlikely that you're going to have all the money to buy the house in your bank account ready to go. If you did, you'd be making a cash offer, and you should be buying during recessions. But if you don't, and you're like most of us, you're going to be needing a mortgage. And so finding a good mortgage broker who, in my case, the main thing, and the way I started out my search was I worked backwards from what am I comfortable paying per month in a mortgage. And from there, they'll be able to tell you exactly like the highest loan amount that you can get, or basically the most expensive house you can get. So they'll ask you for your down payment. They're going to figure out your credit score. They're going to figure out your assets that you already have. And then based on that information, they'll know the amount of risk that they're taking on to issue you a loan. And so with that information, they'll tell you, if you're only willing to spend $3,000 a month in your mortgage payments, you're only going to be able to get a $700,000 loan right now based on the current interest rates for this type of loan. There's different types of loans. You've got the adjustable rate mortgages that change rates over time. You've got the fixed rates, and they've got jumbo loans and conventional loans. There's just a bunch of different types of loans. So again, just like the house search, searching for the right loan for you that fits your own finances, your personal financial situation, is going to be a ton of work. Like this was easily half of the amount of time I spent during this entire process went into working with a bunch of different mortgage brokers, getting the terms that they could get. And then like, I'm really glad I did. I ended up talking to at least 5 or 6 different mortgage brokers before I found one that gave me a rate that I felt was, very competitive, and a good one that I could, go with for that. I ended up going with like a 3-1 ARM with a 4.25% But again, it's specific and unique to you. And so you need to spend the time to figure that out. And that's arguably something you should be doing even before you look at houses, because if you don't even know how big of a mortgage you can get, it makes no sense to even be looking at a house. Like if you can only get $1 million mortgage or $500,000 mortgage, then why would you be looking at a $3 million house? It's like you're going to have so much time and energy during this process that you have to just be very focused on the things that are actually in your reach, and also taking into account the fact that like just because the asking price is 900,000 doesn't mean it's going to be selling for 900,000. Like it can easily go to 1.1 or 1.2 or 1.3, at which point, you know, your pre-qualification letter or your pre-approval letter from your mortgage broker doesn't mean anything. So, you know, very, very stressful, very sad stuff, but it's just the reality situation where, you know, you just kind of have to accept the fact that your finances are what they are, and this is like the biggest house you can get. And you know, it's that financial side of it you have to take into consideration while you're also working with your mortgage broker or your buying agent to figure out like what homes can you afford that meet your criteria. And you know, for me, point three in terms of this lessons learned is just being very, very explicit and defining upfront, what do you want in your house? Does it need a garage? How many bedrooms does it need to have? How many bathrooms or bathroom does it have? Like all these things, you know, does it need to have a big backyard? Does it need to have views? Does it need to have whatever? But just does it have to be close to a school? Like there's so many little things that make up, you know, not just is it close to a school, but is it close to a good school? You know, it like these things, you need to strictly define them and write them down on a piece of paper as the must-haves for your house. Like if you're a parent and you're trying to make sure that your kids are going to go to a school that's highly rated, you know, that's going to be a huge deciding factor on where you live. And then, you know, you can have things that you absolutely do not want to have. Like if you don't want to have to deal with foundation issues, just make extra sure like you've explicitly defined that in your list of must-haves and must-not-haves. That's something I wish I did sooner in this process. But yeah, and so it's a huge endeavor, a lot of stress, a lot of sleepless nights for me. As much as my brain just wanted to like forget about it and just sleep and relax, like my body just completely told me like, no, this is a huge decision that you're making. This is a huge change in your life that will, you know, it's the start of a new chapter. And so it's like, it's not a small thing. And I think, you know, you really need to approach it like it is a big deal, because it is. And if these things go wrong, or, you know, if you're not happy with it, like don't spend that much money on something you're not going to like. Just, you know, patience pays off. You know, and there's gonna be a lot of houses that are like, they've got some of what you want, but they've also got stuff you don't want, and you're paying near the top of your price range for it. And it's just like, you got to learn how to just be like, all right, next one, or we're not even gonna look at that. Another thing I'll call out is that there's no substitute for actually going in person to see these houses. On paper and on Zillow and on these online listings, like, you know, you'll see the photoshopped images or the whatever wide angle lens things where it's just like, they all look beautiful and gorgeous, you know, and the neighborhood looks perfect. And then you go in person to that neighborhood and you see what it's actually like, and you realize that, you know, this house is not anything you would see yourself enjoying or living in, you know, and so it's like virtually nothing comes through. You really have to just go in person, take the time out of your day to do it. Ideally, you would stack them up so you would see houses that are of interest, like, you know, bang, bang, bang. But just, you know, really, really go in. Another thing that, you know, we did that I thought was really important was walk around the neighborhood. And, you know, in my case, like I love cycling. So like ideally you can also ride a bike around that neighborhood, but just see if it's a neighborhood that just makes you feel good, you know? And, you know, these are all little things, but you will be living there. You know, this is a big part of your life, an enormously important thing. And so like, these are things that I wish I just kind of really understood and appreciated earlier on in this process. But, you know, the fact that it's come through is very, very exciting and scary. Like, you know, I hope it is what I think it's going to be. But at the same time, it's been an enormous amount of stress to get here. And, you know, you're going to have to learn how to reach out for help and have people around you who you trust giving you input into all these things, because it's a team sport. And I could not have done it without, you know, my partner and my realtor friend, who's just been super solid and with me this entire time. And my aunt, my family, they've been very supportive of me during this process. So like I'm lucky in that regard. I am privileged in that regard to have them, just for their support. And then the other thing I'll call out just for me personally is just like the finances to make this happen. You know, in my case in the Bay Area, it's insanely competitive and expensive. And, if you're not a US citizen, yes, you can still buy a house in America, but you will not qualify for a mortgage because these mortgages require you to be a US citizen. So, there's all these little things that just kind of creep in that like make it seem like it's unfortunate that like we're excluding so many people from even being able to enter this process. And, I work at Zillow right now, so I get to see, they're really teaching us history lessons on these things. And I also have to say these are my personal views, not those of Zillow. But, just learning the history behind housing in America and how many discrimination practices were in place to make it so that like if you weren't white, you wouldn't be able to move into a neighborhood. If you weren't white, you wouldn't be able to qualify for a mortgage, or you would get a mortgage with just terrible terms that nobody would ever take. There's a systematic issue that people are working to address now, but there is one and it still exists. But just, it's such a huge process. And for many people, it's the American dream to own a home. And, it's such a roller coaster. It really is. I can't even begin to describe the highs and lows of this whole thing. And it's like I can talk about it, but it's another thing to just kind of go through it yourself. And not everyone's supposed to be a home buyer. Like if this isn't your thing and you're not excited about it, like I'd say that probably means just don't get into this if it's not what you want. But if it is what you want and you're willing to put in the work, I think it is something you can do. And it's a huge thing to go through. And I'm still processing a lot of these things and emotions and stuff. Like it's such a big change in life. It is starting a new chapter. And yeah, so I just wanted to end it with that. But like, again, to reiterate, I got lucky. I still feel enormously lucky. It does take a lot of work. Work is a big part of this, but luck is another huge part of success. Like I'm lucky to be where I am in life with the people around me, and I'm very grateful for that stuff. And I'm very happy that I'm even able to possibly be a home buyer. So just want to share that with you all. Let me know if you have any questions. And, if you're getting into this, I wish you all the best of luck. And there's going to be some very low lows, and just know that like you just kind of got to stay strong and believe in yourself and believe that the right house will come up. And don't feel pressure to make an impulsive decision ever. If you're getting a buying agent who's trying to push you to do something that you're not comfortable with, say no. And that's something else I want to make really, really clear here is that like your buying agent is supposed to represent you and your interests. And, in my case, my buying agent was wanting me and pushing me to make an offer on a house that I wasn't sure about. And I felt like I would be overpaying for. And like that, I didn't sleep that night because I was just thinking like, is this really what I want? Am I okay with all these problems that the house has? Am I okay with the fact that like the house doesn't even have everything that I'm looking for? And just, if you come across buying agents who are making you feel like you got to act now, and you're not getting the chance to really even ask yourself if this is something you want. And they're trying to tell you like, if they're going to write up an offer and spend, because they do spend hours writing offers for you. But like, don't let that be a thing that they're going to like bully you into making an offer just because they're going to spend a couple of hours doing. Like, just know that it's your decision at the end of the day. What that offer looks like is entirely your decision, not their decision. They are there to advise you, but it is your call at the end of the day what goes on that offer letter. So don't let them bully you into putting a higher number than you want. Don't let them bully you into not putting contingencies if that's not what you want, because the worst place you can be in is contractually obligated to pay more money for a house that you don't want. So don't get into that situation. It's an enormous pitfall to make. And just, that's the reason why, if you find yourself feeling like you're going there, it's time to get a different buying agent and find one ideally who's your friend who you absolutely trust. or who you've worked with in the past, like those are the types of people you should go with, because they represent you, and that trust you have with them is the most important thing in all this stuff. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck to everyone out there who is wanting to get into this stuff, and be well.